so good to be going live again. It's like so exciting. And today we're going to be talking about something that is near and dear to my heart. And I know John's been thinking about this a lot because we're writing a book together called Magical Meetings. Um, and so we've been talking a lot about why meetings go poorly and what you could do about it. And so this is an extension of that. And today I have John live with me, and we're going to be talking about the post that we just released with Mural. It's a partnership we have with them to develop 5 modules around how to have better meetings online and get the most out of visual collaboration. So John, why is it we've talked about 9 things here, and we can certainly dig into these 9 things, in more detail. But I mean, what's going on with meetings?
Well, our article, I think, speaks to very common reasons they aren't magical, which is, I think, an important audit to do. First of all, because myself included, and definitely those listening, have contributed to these bad habits, or at least been around it. And I think what's important is to just understand those, and why we like the first one we have speaks to me the real issue is an unclear objective. Mm-hmm. And meetings are this funny thing that when you're in a meeting, regardless of the facilitator's intent or capabilities, it feels like work. We're all there and contributing, and it was on our calendars, and we made time for it, and we showed up. So it's work. Whereas if there's not a clear objective, meaning an outcome that everyone in the meeting agrees needs to be done, then you can waste all this time having felt productive, but really nothing changed. If anything, you probably caused meetings to procreate, and you're going to have more of them, leading to this whole dilemma of death by meetings, just like all productivity goes out the window because you're just in meetings all the time. And so I get excited to think about, especially with Mural, that a lot of times you're not starting from scratch. You can start with our templates. We've got dozens of templates. There's other contributors to Mural that have created templates. And those templates, at least the ones that I think are great, have a stated purpose. This is what this template is for. Take your team through this experience, through this template, and you'll get X outcome, or you'll be able to change Y. And I think that's a benefit of virtual work in Mural, is that it's becoming easier to have a clearer objective. Doesn't mean that you're, automatically, just by opening up Mural, that you're going to have a great meeting. You have to sit there with your objective, and then everything else kind of falls in place in your preparation.
Yeah, I think there's a subtle nuance there for all you people who have somewhat come to master this, and that is if the objective is rooted in a deeply held value and purpose, like we're coming together for a real strong reason, and there's a real clear understanding of what needs to get done, we're super rock solid. And that ladders into tip number 2, or problem number 2, which is like missing or inadequate agendas. And the best way to make a good agenda is to start with your objective in mind, use backwards design to design in good milestones and waypoints, if you will, to get you to that objective at the end of the day. Most of the time, people just have a list of topics as their agenda, and that leaves so much more potential.
I think about the importance of multi-directional input of a meeting. I've been guilty of hosting a meeting that is just one directional. I'm the facilitator, I'm presenting, I'm guiding, I'm contributing ideas, I'm doing it all. And that can feel good if you're into the work and you're proud of yourself as a facilitator and you are passionate about the problem or opportunity you're working on. But that's a great way to have a pretty non-magical meeting, because no one has ownership. No one feels like they're contributing. And you can actually see this happen in Mural sometimes, that you're the power user of Mural, and because you just want to get the team making progress, you end up taking the driver's seat the whole time, whereas it's important to sometimes have a looser control and let others, and it's okay if they stumble, especially if they're new to Mural, let them start creating and expressing, and sure, you can come in as a guide and assist, but having multi-directional input where everyone feels truly empowered, not only to contribute, but have like their own little micro facilitation that is contributing to you as a facilitator. And I think that that's a rewarding thing as a facilitator, to see others almost take on a facilitator-like role sometimes. And it's important to be open to letting that control leave your hands, if you will, or your mouse and your keyboard, and let a few other members of the group take over when needed. And that's an art. It's not an exact science. Like at this point in your agenda, let people, but you'll be able to feel the energy as people are getting curious and expressing, and let them play, and see what happens.
So what about this actionless discussion? We've talked a lot about this, this notion that, things just kind of go around in circles, and we have our meeting mantra that's focused around doing the work in the meeting, and how prototypes can really bring forth so much more understanding, elicit so much value. And, I just think that one alone is so powerful.
I agree. And in our book, we're talking a lot about how you could center every meeting, as far as I'm concerned, around a concept of a prototype. The meeting could either the purpose of it, the objective of it, is to create a prototype. That could be an org chart. That could be a software interface concept. That could be a marketing campaign concept. It could be the title of a book. You're making something in the meeting. That's category one. Category two is everyone was doing asynchronous work, building prototypes, and then the meeting is to review all of them and make decisions on them. Or you could have a hybrid of both. And I think that, ask yourself, is my upcoming meeting or the next one, or just look ahead a week in your calendar, how many meetings are either you and everyone else is bringing prototypes, meaning like concepts, doesn't have to just be software prototype. Everyone's tasked to bring something, or the purpose of it is to build something in the meeting. Because if your answer is no to either of those, it might not be a useful meeting, which would lead to people feeling like it wasn't so magical. Whereas when you do have those prototype-centric meetings, you feel like you did the work in the meeting, meaning you feel like a high level of action and momentum. And I think that, I don't know when you want to transition to this, but I think that a lot of our gold standard practices we put into we remixed an old game called bingo, and have a concept of a bingo layout to ask your team and your culture, how many good meeting practices do you have? Because we can all improve. And I've yet to meet one company, ours included, that does all of them perfectly. And I think it's a great conversation point and starting point to use this kind of bingo scorecard to make you aware of really good meeting practices, but then be honest and humble with some of the things you could improve.
Yeah, for sure. So it's here. I want to kind of touch on some of the other pieces before we kind of walk through the bingo in a lot of detail. But yeah, it's like a great little fun assessment tool, especially if you just want to get a little dip your toe into the water on how Mural works, and just kind of do a little assessment on your team. Not only can you learn how to use Mural in a real simple and easy way, but you can also start to understand where sort of opportunities for improvement might be in your meeting culture. But before we dive too deeply into that, I want to point out that the next one was almost a freebie. We talked about low engagement, and prototypes create so much engagement in meetings. And so those can kind of work well together, 3 and 4. But there are other ways to improve engagement too. Even the first one, the clear purpose, the objective. If we are very clear and intentional about why we're gathered, people are going to be more engaged. If you design things that allow them to participate and have a voice, they're going to be more engaged. If you create round robin type of scenarios, they will be more engaged. So the important thing is just taking the time to step back and think about how you're going to capture the room intelligence.
I'm glad you brought that back to surface. If you have a clear objective, and therefore your activities are clearly, or your mural templates, let's say, in combination are adding to that purpose, it makes it easier for another challenging problem that we documented in our post, which is who should even be in the meeting. And you can invite people out of being nice and want to include participation and inclusion. Like all those things are great, but with a clearer purpose, you're able to start narrowing down who should actually be there, because the clearer the objective, the clearer the exercises, others that you want to invite can actually have a say in if they see value in actually being there. We have a meeting mantra that's kind of provocative at our company, and that is all meetings are optional. And we can have that level of, I guess you would say, autonomy, because we have a practice of every time you're getting invited to a meeting, in the invite, the metadata associated is here's the purpose, here's the outcomes, here's what we're doing. So all of a sudden I get an invite, I can review that and make a decision. Am I needed or not? Do I really need to be there? And that's probably the greatest gift you can give a facilitator, is either show up unbelievably excited to contribute because that's an objective you want to help, or don't show up, because then you're going to feel like it's a waste of your time and everyone's going to be able to pick up on that. And it could derail the meeting and make it not magical. So all these other steps we're mentioning kind of unlock the next best practice I'm realizing.
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't have a clearly articulated agenda, an objective or purpose, it's hard to know if you can opt out of the meeting and be kind of feeling good about it, right? Like maybe you just don't want to come, but you're not even sure if your attendance matters or not.
Now, and Douglas, I was just going to say, this is kind of a double stitch, or maybe more of like a baton pass. Who should be in the meeting is not only important for participants, but who should be the facilitator is an important topic as well.
That's right.
Because a facilitator is there to assist and to make things easier. But I'd like to know, because you've thought a lot about this, how does a team think about, when do we bring in an outside facilitator, meaning it's someone that's maybe not totally ingrained and has ownership in the direct opportunity or problem, versus, hey, when can we just run the meeting ourselves as a team? Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, any time that you're struggling to do it yourselves, I mean, that's a clear indicator. It's like, my favorite one is like, yeah, we tried design sprints and they don't really work. And it's like, well, did you use an outside facilitator or an inside one? That's a pretty distinctive element, because you might be bending the rules in ways you don't realize, because you're afraid to tell the senior VP no, or there might be politics at play. It may be, well, here's a great one. It ties back to the article. Maybe you're afraid to bring the elephant to the room. And, out of all the participants, like, we talk about diverse participants being really important, and that maybe the elephant's the most important of all. Because if you don't bring them, if they're not in the room, and certainly if you don't address them, there's going to be really big problems. So we always talk about the unspeakables, or the uncomfortable stuff, or the things that everyone wants to be silent about. How do we bust that silence?
Yeah, that's really powerful, looking at a meeting culture at a macro perspective of who's facilitating the meetings and what kind of recruiting and maybe working with outside facilitation could be beneficial that you're not currently unlocking. Because in meetings that I've been a participant in where there is an outsider, I've found that vulnerability and transparency tends to increase. Almost like, if you look at the whole industry of therapists and coaches, it's like, we're that classic saying, we're the worst at taking our own advice. And so it's refreshing. I know we've worked with, even though we're, experienced facilitators, we still like bringing in other facilitators to run us through activities that can help us see what we can't see, just because of our bias. And to your point, some things that are very uncomfortable to do alone.
Yeah, and we're big fans of liberating structures, and this notion of like distributing control and making sure the flow of information is ubiquitous and unidirectional. And one of the big problems with our conventional structures, and when we're not having great magical meetings, is the flow of information is unidirectional. So I'm doing a status report, and you invited to just listen to what I have to say. And so these new techniques, whether you're using a facilitator or just getting in the mural with your team, can allow information to become unidirectional and flow. I really like to talk about multi-threaded meetings, where everyone in the meeting is like adding stuff to mural in real time, meaning that each person's reacting to what's being said, adapting it with their own nuance, and that allows more content to be created, and it becomes this rich interpretation of the things that were said, and we can start to identify when we're not aligned on our understanding of where people are coming from, and it makes much more resilient decisions, and progress tends to move much faster. So maybe we'll wrap with poor documentation. I think it goes hand in hand with this multi-threaded stuff. If we're capturing it on the fly, then it's all there. And we can come back to it. In fact, coming back to a meeting that's been underway previously, where we created this prototype, we've been working on it. So whether you're doing live scribing in Mural or creating a prototype of Mural, or maybe your prototype is just a Google Doc, like you can basically use these things, these virtual tools, to ensure that you're constantly visualizing and retaining your decisions for the future.
Yeah, one of our concepts that a lot of times is new for facilitators, and the world of Mural has made this lovely, is, okay, you did a workshop in Mural and you used the template and everyone contributed in this beautiful way. You as the facilitator, I use a tool called Loom. It allows you to do a quick little screencast with your face included. You take 5 or 10 minutes to just recap all the work done in the mural. Again, you could start it by saying, you have the mural up and you say, I was the facilitator. This was our objective. This was our purpose. And we went through these steps of exercises in this digital space. And we created things, we prioritized, we did some sense making and some theming, and we created some things. And ultimately, we ended on this, and this is what's happening next. Again, 5-minute video, sometimes less. And I share that out, not only with the meeting attendees for a recap of what happened. When you send it to people that weren't in the meeting, little do you know, like, it's keeping them informed about all the work done, but you just showed them like high-level Jedi moves of how to have a good meeting. And so you start educating the rest of the culture. And Douglas and I have found out that this actually leads to a huge problem inside of organizations, which is fear of missing out, FOMO. And if you can develop this beautiful habit of just doing a quick recap of the work in Mural, people will tend to feel less and less pressured to attend all meetings. They'll be like, oh, wow, we run meetings with more intent and focus. And so I'll feel more free to not go to the ones that I'm not needed in, because I'll get a recap of it and I'll know what happens. And I think that the world of Mural has really helped me in that. Whereas in the past, with a room with all stickies that I'd have to pull out my cell phone, it's much harder to tell that story because you're always like clearing space. Whereas everything's preserved in Mural, and it's so easy now to tell the story of the meeting. Which has profound cultural change effects that I'm starting to see.
Excellent. Well, I want to just spend a little bit of time. I know we've gone a bit longer than we anticipated, but we're having fun. So you get more for your viewing pleasure. I do want to talk a little bit about the bingo board, and Justin has commented in LinkedIn, and it looks like the Voltage Control teams replied to Sarah here on Facebook. You can go to the Mural blog and look at the 9 problems with meetings blog post. There's a link straight there. And I'm sure it'll be easy to find in Google as well before too long. But ultimately, we have this really nifty mural, and you can jump in and start to ask yourself some of these questions around what kind of meetings do we have. So, John, what do we have here on the board? What are some of the fun things that, I guess it's, do you create agendas?
I do, after I draft my purpose and then therefore my narrative. So what's the purpose? And then I choose a narrative, for example, open, explore, close, and then I make an agenda. So yes, I do.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
Sweet. So what about 01, clear objectives?
Yes, I've learned over time that a quick way to have a non-magical meeting is to not do that. So definitely have clear objectives every time. Otherwise, I'm not facilitating.
Excellent. All right. We've got a N2, stick to the schedule.
So I'm going to say yes, but I just want to make sure people know that I stick to the schedule in terms of this is when we agreed to start and this is when we agreed to end.
That's a slippery slope, right?
It is. But you have to shift things sometimes inside, meaning a sudden really important issue came up, and then my formally drafted activities, I may have to pivot on them, but still keep in mind when to end. And then also that's, we're human. Sometimes you go over, but in a workshop with a client, my goal is to make sure that we start on time, we end on time. Sometimes I have to shift the agenda based on some unknowns that present themselves.
What about, do you do the work in the meeting?
I am notorious for this. If we're not doing work in the meeting, you will not get an accept invite from John. Big fan of prototyping, so definitely a dot on that bingo card.
Yeah, it makes me chuckle because we just put an ad out across social media that says, "Are you in a meeting right now?" And so if you're on social media, you're not doing any work, and you're in a horrible meeting. So you should come learn how to have magical meetings with us.
Yeah.
Do you? Let's. How about N4? Establish clear roles within the meeting.
Yes, and that goes into prep. It's usually overlooked. Making sure that there are roles set and beforehand communicate that, but then also re-communicate that at the kickoff of the event. And sometimes you have to remind people, and a facilitator should not feel bad about being repetitive because I found participants are just looking for clarity, and rarely do you say it once and it's clear. Sometimes you have to say it a few times.
How about B5, hold space for input?
Definitely. And literally hold space, like in Mural, we make placemats for each participant to contribute, but then also conversationally, absolutely.
In fact, in large virtual meetings, we talk about the Japanese words for space and how there's like 4 different types of space, and you can design and consider all these different kinds of spaces. Let's see, B4, address tension. I'm getting better at this one.
So we could put I don't know if we can do a semicircle, but this is a topic that we're writing a lot about in our upcoming book, Magical Meetings. That is a very important art, and it takes practice, and it takes poetry and language and the power of questions. I like the other ones. I'm much more skilled in because I've practiced that. Whereas I appreciate the philosophy of this one, but I'll be humble I'm in my early beginnings of being good at that one.
And how about I4, include solo work and group work?
Oh yes. So going back to do the work in the meeting, that's to me like a paired element of it. Just making sure this is the number one way for me to manage attention. So again, giving each person solo work so that they can express their genius, they can focus. And then if you do that well, people are excited to then show off what they made. And so that's why that oscillation between solo work and then group socialization is just fantastic for energetic management, but also just attention.
Excellent. I believe that makes bingo. We've got one of my favorite kinds of bingo, which is like right through the middle.
Oh, nice.
And the center is a freebie for everyone. Like, it's not just because John works at Voltage Control that he got a pass on that one. But thanks for playing bingo with me today, John.
That was fun. I used to go with my grandmother when she babysat me growing up to bingo competitions, and this has a slightly deeper element of meaning because I have to sit here and contemplate. It's really awesome.
Yeah. Little kind of introspect kind of where we're at and assess how we can improve our meetings.
And it's actually this is a real-time idea for those watching this. You do this with your team to analyze your meeting culture. But actually, if you're looking to identify people inside of your company, or let's say you're trying to hire an outside facilitator, this could be your like little secret weapon that you're hiding behind the screen to guide a conversation. Ask somebody, hey, how do you address tension in a room? You ask a facilitator that, they're gonna be like, oh wow, that's a real question there. And you could use it as sort of a recruitment mechanism. I just kind of thought about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, people are going to be a lot more honest if they don't know they're playing bingo. So you could just be using it in the background as an assessment tool, and then show it to the team to visualize what the discussion they just had. I think that could be pretty powerful as well. Anyway, thanks for listening. We went for a while here, but it's always fun chatting with John Fitch, and we always love talking about meetings. So thanks for listening.
Happy magical meetings.